Welcome back to another edition of the Season in Review series, and in today's episode we will be featuring the LSU Tigers, who went 9-4 with a bowl win against the Baylor Bears. Went 8-4 in the regular season. In today's video, we look back at the 2024 season. I give my overall thoughts on the season. I grade out every single position on the field. I talk about the highs and lows of the season for the Tigers. And then at the end of the video, I give some thoughts on some improvements that I think can be reasonably made in order for the Tigers to have more success in the next season. So what's up, everyone? This is going to be a really fun episode. I've already done a bunch of these on the channel, and if you like this one, if you like the format, go check out some of my other ones. Maybe your rivals. I got Bama up there. I have Tennessee on the way. Florida's up there. And then a bunch of Big Ten teams as well. And we got more coming. So thank you for clicking onto this video. And let's just get started. Now, here are my overall thoughts on the season for the Tigers. It was another disappointing season for Brian Kelly. I'm not going to say that it was a disappointing season in general because of my second point, which I will talk about in a second, but I just want to get this point out there that Brian Kelly has always been at this B plus A minus level. When he was at Notre Dame, when he was at other schools, he was never able to be a top level head coach. And that's the same thing that's happening with LSU. LSU is a top tier one of one program. They should not be having 8-4 seasons. They should not be having a defense that is just not very good at all. Like we'll talk about here in a second as well with that third point. They should be a top tier team, and they're not because solely, in my opinion, of their head coach, Brian Kelly. Same thing with Notre Dame. As soon as Brian Kelly leaves, Marcus Freeman comes in instantly, 3 years in the national championship. So that's what I'm saying here. Brian Kelly, it's another disappointing season for him. He just can't get over that threshold. So that's my first point. Second point was this season was a product of roster turnover. I mean, you had so many guys from that 2023 team leave. You had two first round wide receivers leave in Brian Thomas Jr. and the other guy, I forget his name off the top of my head. Then you lose the Heisman winner in Jaden Daniels. This season was a product of roster turnover. There were a lot of guys that left this team and went to the NFL going into 2024, and they had to replace a ton of production. And I just knew that they weren't going to be able to produce what they had in 2023 into 2024. I just knew that that wasn't going to happen. But still, I think that so this season was a product of roster turnover, and then the defense kept them from big success as well. The offense played decently, but the defense ranked 58th overall, which is just not great in my opinion, and they just really didn't make plays when it needed to happen. Okay, so now we get into the position grades for this team. As you can see here, coaching I have at B+. I thought it could have been a bit better, and that's all I'm going to say on that front. At quarterback, I have a grade of an A- for Garrett Nussmeier here. Nussmeier was pretty darn good all throughout the season. He wasn't Jaden Daniels, obviously. His first year starting, he had a 64.2 completion percentage, threw for over 4,000 yards. I think he was top 5 in terms of passing yards. Threw 29 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. It's a bit high. I think next year, because he is coming back, I think he can get that down. His quarterback rating was 142.7, and he played every single game of the season. So I think that he really led the team well for coming behind a Heisman winner. It's always tough to do that, but I think he did that pretty well. The one thing I would say is that his mobility wasn't the greatest. He had negative 38 yards rushing, obviously taking sacks into account there. But I mean, he's kind of a statue back there, kind of just tosses the ball, kind of like Kyle McCord. But I digress. I thought that his play warranted an A-. At running back, I have a C-. Their running game was honestly not very good. It ranked toward the bottom of the FBS in total. Their number one running back, Caden Durham, ran for 750 yards, which is okay. But then he kind of dropped down off a cliff here, and the running game really just wasn't up to snuff at all. But that's because they were just firing the ball in to their wide receivers, which we will talk about next. But for running back, I have a C minus. Okay, so when it comes to wide receivers here, Aaron Anderson out of the slot he was one of the best slot receivers in the nation. Had 884 yards out of the slot, 5 touchdowns. Kyron Lacy, obviously, he got arrested, but if we're going to talk about his play on the field, he was excellent. He had 866 yards and 9 touchdowns. And then CJ Daniels, as the number 3 wide receiver, had 480 yards, which is awesome. And then you have guys like Chris Hilton Jr., who was a very young guy, only played in 6 games, but had 243 yards, which is amazing. Had 27 yards per reception. That's phenomenal. And then Xavier Thomas at wide receiver also had 218 yards. So this wide receiver group was deep, and it produced very well. So A. And then at tight end, we have A minus as well. Mason Taylor was an excellent tight end. He went for 550 yards, 9.9 yards per reception, and had 2 touchdowns as well, and he was a good blocker as well. So I think that he warranted an A minus. The offensive line was an A plus. I mean, you really can't get any better than the offensive line that they had. Will Campbell's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. At left tackle, Garrett Dellinger at left guard was very good. Miles Frazier is going to go to the draft, and then Emory Jones Jr. at the other tackle position. Probably not a day 1 pick, but you never know. But he was a phenomenal tackle. Well, let me correct that. He probably will be a day 1 pick. Probably not a top 10 pick like Will Campbell will be, but Emory Jones Jr. will probably be like a mid to late first round draft pick, which is insane that they have 4 guys who are going to go into the NFL, and 2 of them probably in the first round. So this offensive line, this is honestly one of my only A plus grades that I've given out so far, and I've made about 11 of these videos. So kudos to this offensive line for being an absolute machine. Okay, so now we will talk about the defense and then make our way to overall grades from there. Coaching was a B minus. I thought there was a lot of talent on this defense just in general, and they just didn't perform as they should have. So I gave it a B minus, which is about average to below average, around that range. At defensive line, I gave it a B, which is pretty good. It's average to above average. They had their leading sack person was Braden Swinson, the right defensive end. The next guy with 8.5. The next guy up, Savion Jones at the other defensive end spot, excuse me, was Savion Jones. He had 4.5 sacks as well. Also, Braden Swinson had 13 TFLs. Savion Jones had 8. So those guys were a pretty darn good duo as well. And then on the inside, Paris Shand and Gio Paz were also pretty good. They were they were decent defensive linemen. So that's their whole defensive line right there. Their starting defensive line. That they're all going to the draft. They're all graduating. So they're gonna have to reload. They already did, getting Jack Pyburn from Florida and Patrick Payton from Florida State. So I think that could be a pretty darn good duo if they scheme them right. So then the next group here, which is the linebackers, I gave an A minus because they have Whit Weeks on their team. Whit Weeks, the middle linebacker on this team, was excellent. He was one of the best middle linebackers in all of college football. He had 125 combined tackles, 10 TFLs, 3.5 sacks, and an interception. Here's what I'd love to say about linebackers. The middle linebacker especially, is the toughest job on the defense without a doubt. Maybe if you have a free safety and how you scheme them, but that's beside the point. When you have a middle linebacker, that guy is supposed to make tackles and cover, on an occasions by the quarterback. They're the captain of the defense. They do everything on the field, but their primary job is to get players on the ground to tackle. They're tackling machines. And when you have an A plus tackler like Whit Weeks, with 61 solo tackles, 64 assisted, and 125 combined total tackles, anything else you get out of him is great. 2 sacks here and 5 TFLs would have still netted him a great grade. But the fact that he has 10 TFLs, 3.5 sacks, and an interception, plus 3 passes defended, shows me that he's just an elite player there as well. And then Greg Penn the third as well. He was playing linebacker as well. He was pretty good. He graduated. He'll be going to the draft. Harold Perkins at linebacker, stud, but again got hurt, and Ashton's. Well, no, we're getting to that in a second. So now we go to the corners. Okay, so with the corners, I did not think that their secondary was very good at all, in my opinion. I think that was part of the reason why they didn't do a whole lot when it came to clutch defense, is because they were giving up a lot. Their corners, I gave a C grade, which is below average. You did have guys like Zy Alexander and Major Burns that were okay, uh, but this team had they had 6 total interceptions on the team. Think about that. They had 6 total interceptions on the team. 2 of them were by linebackers. So that's 4 interceptions by your secondary. A lot of really decent corners, even halfway decent corners, are getting 4 in like 6 games. So really, they weren't good at taking the ball away. They didn't really defend the pass either. Their passes defended numbers are very low, and they gave up a lot of yardage. So I thought that them and the safeties weren't very good. The safeties, I bumped up their grade a little bit more, but I honestly just wasn't a very good secondary. Okay, so now here are the final overall grades for the LSU Tigers. Coaching was a B, offense was an A minus, defense was a B minus, special teams was a B plus, and all of that comes out to about a B team grade. It's hovering around the line of B, B plus, obviously. So I combine every single one of my position grades and just combine them into a overall team grade. The team grade is reflective of about a very good to pretty darn good team in my estimation, and I think that most of you guys would agree with me. Okay, so our next segment here, gearing away from a grading standpoint to my highs of the season. So when you go back through the season, what's the season for the LSU Tigers? Number one, beating Baylor in the Texas Bowl. It was a really good win for LSU. I don't think many people realize that Baylor was a pretty darn good team. They went 8-4 in the regular season, just like LSU. Of course, they play in a worse conference. I get that, but they still were a very decent team. It wasn't like Florida going out there and beating up on Tulane. Uh, no, nothing against Florida there, but that's just the way the cards were drawn, and LSU took advantage of the fact that they played an actually decent team, and they destroyed them. They just played really well, and a top 10 passing game. This was a top 10 passing game by pretty much every single metric, and they were really good against not against the pass. They were really good passing the ball. It was a huge part of their offense. They did not do much running the ball, but when they did, you know, there's that. So that's my second point. And then the third point is some signature wins that I made note of throughout the season was beating Ole Miss at home and beating South Carolina on the road and beating them by multiple scores too. Those were 2 really good wins for me on the LSU season. Okay, so yeah, we do have to get through this. It's the low of the season, for the lowest points of the season for LSU. Excuse me. So the 3-game losing streak to A&M at home, Bama, and then Florida. That's what killed the season right there. Middle of the season, you're in the heart of your SEC slate, and you play Texas A&M, Alabama, and Florida. All teams that went to a bowl game, all teams that finished with 8 or more wins, and you lost all 3 of them. If you win one of those, I think it's a slightly different outlook on the season. If you win 2 of them, you're in the college football playoff. So, and the SEC championship game, by the way. So, that I think that was a low of the season. That 3-game stretch was just miserable for the Tigers, and then just an overall bad defense. It was just really not. It really wasn't where the talent indicated they were going to be, and honestly. So and now the third one here was a subpar rushing attack. Yes, it means that they had a fantastic passing offense, but if you cannot complement that with a really good running game, then it just turns your offense one dimensional. And the offense played all right, but it was not a top 10 offense in general. It wasn't an offense that could be feared for being multidimensional. No, it was. an offense that was feared for just doing one thing and passing the ball. So those are some takeaways that I had on the season, some critiques for the LSU season. Okay, so before we get into the last segment here, I want to ask you guys, ask LSU Tiger fans to please subscribe to the channel. Our channel has been growing, but we definitely need help on the channel to continue to grow. Our goal right now, our goal until March is to get to 500 subscribers. If you could help us do that, Tiger Faithful, I would be really appreciative of this. Also, like the video, share it around to more Tiger fans, and comment your thoughts down below. I respond to pretty much every comment, and it's a place where we get to talk about the topic at hand. This video, it's the LSU Tigers, and give me your thoughts on Brian Kelly, on the offense, on the defense. Give me your overall thoughts on the season in general down in the comments section below. I love to see those. I respond to almost every single one of them, and it's a great forum for conversation down there. And once again, I would like to ask you to please subscribe. I don't read ads. I'm not paid by any sponsor. I'm not any of those. I keep it all free for you guys here on the channel. So please consider subscribing. And now we move into our final segment here. Here are some improvements that I think can be made within reason for this team to go places next year. Number one, just getting back over the hump. Get to double-digit wins. Get to places where Brian Kelly hasn't gotten you yet, and have Brian Kelly do that. I think that that's been well documented in this video so far. Just take that next step in terms of win totals. You got the talent, you got the fan base, the atmosphere, the stadium. You got everything going for you. It's time to get back over that hump. And then overall defensive improvements, I think that can be made, especially in the secondary. And then the rushing attack as well being a little bit more balanced, not so predictable. And I think that that would be great for the LSU Tigers going forward. I think if that you make these two schematic improvements and then the one mindset improvement there, I think that this team can go far. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Go check out all my other videos on the platform, just like this one. We've got so many in the SEC and in the Big Ten, and we have some more coming for you from other conferences as well. All different teams, all different types of situations. This LSU situation is definitely a unique one, and I enjoyed covering them. I enjoy covering them in general. So thank you all so much for watching. Thank you, LSU fans, for watching, and I will see you in the next one.